Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. My name is Gert and those of you who know me know that we at SEO Leverage, we always start with figuring out what do clients actually want to achieve. The best traffic or the highest traffic values are not worth much if this traffic doesn't do what we want from it, convert usually into leads, into sales. And as much as I really like CRO, conversion rate optimization, I'm definitely far from being an expert. This is why I'm really happy to welcome Kurt Philipp today, who I guess knows a thing or two about this and this has agreed to be sharing some stuff here. Welcome to Kurt.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's interesting. I actually come from an SEO background too. So that's how I got into CRO, was like I started doing conversion rate optimization on my own affiliate sites, on my own clients' brick and mortar business websites. And then that's how I got into it. Like 20 years I've been doing it now, something like that. So it's been a long journey, and I just saw the need for it in the marketplace about 5-6 years ago. So that's why I started Convertica, and it's definitely been a good change of business direction.
That's amazing. Yeah. Obviously in the SEO industry, people know you as the CRO guy. You had a different domain, the CROguy.com in the past. It's now convertica.org. Could you give our listeners who might not have heard about you a little bit of your background? How do so you came from SEO, you have convertica.org. How's your relation with CRO? How has this developed?
So when I pivoted from SEO, I had a bit of burnout, went through a few growth and Google penalty cycles a few times. So I sort of burnt out from that. So I took a few months off and then pivoted into CRO Guy was the original version of it. I didn't know what the potential was at the time. So I was just like, look, I'll take on 5 or 6 extra clients a month. That'll buffer the SEO fluctuations that I have from like having to rely on SEO all the time. And then it grew very quickly from there. But larger brands didn't take me seriously because it was the CRO guy, right? Just like a consultant. So I think a year after I started that in 2016, I think it was, at the end of 2016, we pivoted into Convertica. And that's sort of our client base is sort of 7- and 8-figure businesses that have a super large amount of traffic and large amount of orders and sales. And then that's sort of where we are. That's where we are today. We've got around 20 staff, and we've worked with right around 800 clients now. So it's been very busy.
This must be amazing. I mean, there are 2 things that come to mind. We also have a team of, I think, 26 people right now and growing. So obviously there's a lot of management, big management part of it. I have heard, not sure if this is still the case, that you handed a lot of the operations, day-to-day operations off to someone on your team. Is this correct?
Yeah. So I found originally when I pivoted from CRO Guy to Convertica, I hired sort of apprentices to duplicate me, right? To run tests, come up with ideas. But then you get to a certain size, which was probably about 10 staff, where it's just not scalable at that point. So one of the apprentices was showing like really, really good operation skills and management skills. So then he ended up moving into the head of operations position. And then now, he's got 16, 17 people under him that he's hired in person and trained and everything. And now he's actually partner in the company now. So 5 years later, he's come a long way. So.
This is amazing. This is amazing. You mentioned initially you're working with mostly 7-8-figure companies. This brings me to something I wanted to touch upon actually a little bit later. When does it really make sense for someone to start with CRO or engaging an agency like your agency? Always a lot of people, not as many as you would expect, know the conversion rate and want to improve it and know it makes sense to work on this a little bit. But when does it actually make sense to engage in a CRO agency like yours?
Yeah, so I literally just had a call before this one of a guy that wasn't quite ready for the services. And he was sort of like, I think he said he has around 6,000 traffic a month, but they're over like 10, 15 pages. So no pages really have over 1,000 traffic a month. And at that point, it's just that we can't run split tests quick enough. So for a client to be on retainer with us, they need to have ideally above 10,000 visitors per month per page that we test. Ideally, that's the ideal situation. We can go, if it's like a lead gen type website, you can go as low as 2,000 to 5,000 depending on the site. But ideally, it's that 10,000 per page is where we can run 2 tests a month and compound the results, because most clients are with us 6 months plus. So in order to get good results in a 6-month time frame, you need to be able to run 6 to 10 tests ideally, because you're gonna have 1 or 2 losers in that time too, and you don't want to spend 2 or 3 months waiting for a test to complete only to find out that it's a loser, right? Then you've lost that client almost certainly. So we work with mainly those clients because it's our price point, but also the traffic and order volumes we need to be able to run tests. So that's the main reason why we work with clients that big. But we also have clients in the low and mid 6-figure, but on average they would be 7, 8-figure businesses, because that's just the best clients to work with, where we can run enough tests.
Absolutely, this makes a lot of sense. If someone doesn't get to this level of like 10,000 visitors a month to 3,000 for lead generation, is there anything they can do in order to improve their conversion rate?
Yeah, absolutely. So almost all clients I do a call with on sales calls, trust and credibility is just missing. So for some reason, developers always put reviews right at the footer of a website. I don't know why this is.
I think it's a WordPress template.
No, exactly. It's a WordPress template, but these developers have no idea about marketing and sales. Obviously, the developers, but it's very frustrating. But it's good for us, but it's very frustrating for the client, because no one ever sees the reviews, which are the most important, right? But it's not about cramming 20 reviews on a revolving slider on the homepage. It's like picking 1 or 2 really good reviews that communicate your product really well in their review. Like, this product does X and it really helped me with X problem, whatever. And someone's actually written that review. That's great to have right below your offer or your headline of your homepage. And then a nice call to action to the offer. It's just very simple. But a lot of people have, a very ambiguous offer on the homepage with no real call to action. You can't really tell what it is, or you can't even get in contact with them. The only way to get contact with them is to go to the contact us page and fill out some really long, shitty form. So the easiest way is to just like, what is your goal of the website? Make it very clear what your offer is, and then make it very easy for people to complete the goal that you want them to complete. That's it. And most people try to offer let's just say we have like a web design firm, for example, and they also do web design, AdWords, Facebook ads, and they like trying to sell everything instead of just becoming very clear and being able to communicate their offer of just one of their services very well that they're very good at. That's their highest margin. And then pushing the user to fill out a lead magnet that, that's a whole other thing. But I think people overcomplicate it a bit too much. Because that was the way it was. That was the way it was 15 years ago. We didn't know what we were doing, but the market's maturing a lot now, so.
It's really interesting that you bring this up. I think the WordPress templates and the themes you can purchase for cheap or get free, they're doing a lot of damage to the industry and to those website owners. Because once you're in different areas, so they're really made to be sold. Essentially was our experience. People, they're made with all those components and everything flashy and all images optimized, etc. Now then you start applying this to a website and upload your own content, which doesn't look as good anymore. And you might remove a few components because you don't have so much traffic, and ultimately you have a crappy website that's not conversion optimized. It's not SEO optimized at all. So this is doing a lot of damage. We do very often quick audits for sites. So this is something that people can get very cheap on our website, and I'm usually then giving them some feedback. And the framework I learned, I think, from my mentor, James Remco, a few years back, he just said, look, you need to say who you are, what you're doing, why people should trust you, who else trusted you, and where people can sign up. And this is something that stuck to my head. And we try to apply this to our SEO clients as well, where I just really ask them, why should people at this stage trust you enough? Or where is the next call to action? I very often compare this to pharmacy stores in Spain. There is one on every corner, but there's then on websites, there's no call to action anywhere. And sometimes sites seem to be making it really hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so easy to make a website now. So what happened, the big trend we saw was people starting their own e-commerce websites when COVID happened. And then due to the laws of scale, a lot of those guys became really successful from that due to just everyone moving online. They didn't know what they were doing. They set up a Shopify store, they uploaded their products, and boom, they're making 7 figures. They didn't know anything about marketing. They didn't know anything about sales. They just found a niche or a product that was needed at the time by luck, honestly, by luck. And then they're coming to us making $2.5 million a year and their conversion rates at the floor, So that's what we saw on a huge scale was exactly that. Sites that just look like absolute crap, but were just a great product that people wanted. So we had a lot of success of working with guys like that they didn't know how to communicate their offer or make it easy for people to buy. They just use a standard template on Shopify, So
it's interesting. We work with a lot of people who have also gone big really with Facebook ads, maybe on social media, have like 50,000, 100,000 subscribers or followers or whatever it is based on the platform. And then you look at their website and not extracting any leads. They get a lot of traffic, don't really know where to direct this because it was just all their attention. They were pretty much, I had a client literally tell me they lived inside Instagram for 2 years just to make sure that this was growing and answer all the direct messages, etc. And now we're trying to build up the website essentially as a lead generation platform. What's really interesting for us, and we do a lot of site audits from SEO, it's usually the first step. We really need to audit the entire site, the content, the backlinks, etc., to get an idea what's happening and what might be affecting what. A lot of people don't track their conversions. And this is really interesting where you say, okay, apparently it's working good enough, but you ask them about the conversion rate. Even multiple 7-figure businesses we see not tracking conversions. So they track the sales, the revenue, etc., but they don't know where this comes from. Where then the first step we try to take is getting those conversion rates up and say, okay, where does this traffic come in that actually then converts? Why do you think tracking and then also CRO is not widespread? It's not something people have in their minds.
It can be complicated to set up, right? It's like a lot of people get into analytics and they're just like, what the hell is all this? I mean, it's easy for us because we've been doing it for so long, and it used to be quite basic and now it's quite advanced. But when you spend enough time in analytics, it's very, very simple. And I mean, you can spend a couple of hours on YouTube trying to work out how it works, but it's still complicated. Understanding what a conversion is, understanding like where to make them fire, and understanding what funnels are is like second nature to guys like us, but to new people in online business, it's really not. It's foreign. So one great attribution tracking software that I found a couple of years ago was made by a guy also in the DC called Jesse Hanley named bentonow.com, which has been really good for our business. It allows us to identify exactly how much each client is worth to us when they came in, when they signed up, what traffic source, what anything. It creates like an avatar profile about that client and whether they come in on their mobile, or here's a bunch of ways to work out if it's the same person, all these type of things. And then you even have email off the back of that. So then you can target those people on separate lists. We moved away from MailChimp to do this sort of stuff. It's been huge. Being able to segment the traffic based on so many more details. So not the traffic, the list has been huge. But that's a piece of software. bentonow.com is one that's worked really well for us. But I don't know why. I think it's just like people aren't aware. The market's starting to become more mature, but for people starting out, it's not really talked about because you just trust if something looks good that it's going to sell, right? Because it's like a nice theme or whatever. So
I had a client once. This was years ago. And obviously, when we're talking about maturity, this was 10 years ago probably. But I asked them if their site was working for them, and they just opened up the page and said, "Yeah, look, it's working." And I said, "Like, okay, what about conversions? What about contact requests? What about visitors, etc.?" They didn't have any analytics software installed. They were just waiting for the phone calls to come in. This was a local business, so they just track success based on marketing, essentially based on phone calls, and have a register and said today 5 phone calls, tomorrow 1, so something is off. And then we have 10, so something is going great. Segmentation we have seen work this really, really well. Once you segment which kind of articles drive actually the right people in that then convert, and then those conversions actually turn into sales. People are using like Bento or Psychmetrics or Wicked Reports or things like those seem to be doing a really good job tracking then across the different channels. We have had quite some success with clients when changing lead magnets. And I was wondering what your experience was. So what we usually find, or very often find, is that people spend quite some effort bringing up an ebook or something that works essentially for everybody interested in their niche. And then once we start switching this up and putting something in that's relevant for the actual article where this is being published, then conversions skyrocket. And I was wondering if this is obviously not a stage yet where probably an A/B test would make sense. They don't have those 10,000 visitors. We just essentially change one thing for another one and see what happens. And so, okay, you're using this lead magnet, but on this article, let's try that one and see what happens. And this is a difference very often from 5 to maybe 30% conversion rate. How do you go about lead magnets in general? Where do you start, or do you only do A/B testing in general with the clients of the size you're working with?
Yeah, so I can only speak about changing lead magnets on my own business, because most of the businesses we work with are already quite established, right? And they're already creating a lot of revenue. So we're just trying to polish their sites up to milk out another 20, 30, 40% in conversion rates, whatever. So, but on our site, we've tried a bunch of different lead magnets. Again, because it's low volume, high ticket, you can't A/B split test it. It has to be a manual tracking system, right? So it's like, and again, that's highly inaccurate because seasonality, different times of the year, depends what you're spending and things like this. But a lot of times, if it's not converting, it's very clear that it's not converting. If you then change it to a lead magnet that starts to convert, you don't really need to split test it, right? It's obvious that your lead magnet before was crap if it was like an ebook. But I think the old way to do it was like a free 6-page, summary of best CRO tips for 2020. It was like something that was very popular ages ago, right? But we just got creative with doing, we just do a full-on audit for every site that submits to us, gets them on a call. We have like a 10-step email sequence that then goes to them to warm them up. And like we have a bunch of stuff. I think the ebook lead magnet or whatever, something of value that you want to hook them in to get their email, whatever that is just like the first step. It should never be like the one and only thing you do. Once you got their email, that's the whole point of getting them as a person on your list to now build that relationship with them. And then once you've got them on the list to build a relationship, now it's time to show your true value by giving them, say, 5 to 10 emails of value before one email of selling.
That's an
instead of a lot of people will do like 2 or 3 emails and then boom, buy my product 50% off, whatever. And I think you need to spend, well, especially in our niche where, 5-figure minimum customer value, it's a lot different to say if you're selling a $37 e-course or something. So it really depends on the type of space you're in. But yeah, I think getting the email on the list is where it starts. And then once you've done that, now it's time to like build that relationship with them by giving them heaps of free tips and free value. So I think you're like the best person in the niche that you're in. So.
No, absolutely. And I think digital marketing in general, we see this in SEO as well, is obviously trust-based. So you can't give guarantees. You can talk about experience. You can't give guarantees up front. Obviously in SEO, you can in digital marketing and social or whatever, conversion optimization, I guess. You can probably, the more clients you have and the more references you can point to, the easier it gets for a client to make a decision. It's okay, if you work with such and such,
we
going to trust you.
Give like
have a lot of examples, obviously, after a while, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we looked at all our clients and then we looked at what the average conversion rate increase was and then the mean, and then looked at like, okay, what is we don't call it a guarantee, but we call it a goal for the campaign length. So when I'm on the sales call, we say that our goal is to hit a 20% increase in conversion rate by the end of the campaign. If we don't hit it by the end of the campaign, we keep testing at no extra charge until we do. And that actually works better than a refund, because that shows like, people are coming to work with you because generally like 20% is a sizable amount of revenue increases for them, right? So, and that worked a lot better because obviously we can't give guarantees either. And you can't advertise guarantees because we had our Facebook account shut down pretty quickly once we did that. We didn't know about that at the start. But yeah, it's a much better way to show value and show the value of your campaign and proposal without sounding like a car salesman, right?
Right, absolutely. one thing that came to mind when you said you work with obviously several hundred tests at once in parallel. We see this with SEO as well. The more clients we work with, the more experience we have, the more information we can extract from one client possibly and say, okay, this might also work for this client. Let's try this there. How do you come up with testing ideas? Is this mostly cross-referencing projects that have been working? Do you have a creative process on a project or a brainstorming what you can do there? How do you go about this?
So we have the strategy department, and that consists of about 5 of the team. But up until about client 100, it was very much creative, very much like brainstorming other case studies. We were part of some paid subscription newsletters that would share split testing, winning split tests, and so on. But now that it's very little creative input, and we see a website and we go, okay, we have a whole Rolodex of successful tests. We go, okay, what are the first 5 tests we're going to run here that will have a high chance of winning because they don't have XXX? And then so it's got a much higher win rate since we switch to that process. So we actually track what our win rate is. We track what per quarter, what our lose and increase rate is and things like that. And we can see the changes and how much they've impacted. So when we switch to just using what's worked on other clients' previous winning campaigns, it was so much better and more efficient, much more efficient than trying to come up with new ideas all the time.
That's really fascinating. We obviously, when I check out a site with my team, we very often say, okay, look, this is something that worked for this one. Let's start with this. And then we line up essentially the prioritized items in the audit and say, okay, we don't do anything else, but get those meta descriptions right, because we know you're going to triple your click-through rate. And if you don't do anything else, make sure you have those menu elements essentially be part of what you're doing, just to make sure that Google understands they are important on this page. There's certain things where you definitely also can start, and then probably in our case it gets a little bit more custom. But I can understand the more data you have, the more things you know where you can start the testing process. So that's really, really interesting. I want to go back to the lead magnet once more, just because I know for many of our clients this is a really important topic. What do you think characterizes a good lead magnet?
High perceived value. So it's not necessarily that it is high value, but a high perceived value. So what guys used to do back in the day with courses, SEO courses, as you would know on Black Hat World and all those places back in the day, was they would put a image up of the course or the free course giveaway, and there would be 5 DVDs. There would be a software box, and it would be value $297 now, 0 if you give her your email, and just trying to communicate to the visitor how much value this PDF or ebook. I keep just using this as an example because it's probably the most common one. So it could be our top 10 biggest CRO findings of 2021. And then we can communicate, our clients have spent tens of thousands of dollars to get this information through using our process, but you can have it for free just by entering your email. So it's not so much about, of course, you've got to have value in the document too, but don't just say free ebook. If you enter your email, you want to really learn how to sell that ebook so that it seems like it's worth a lot before you try to, you're trying to advertise that lead magnet, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely how you frame things. I think this is true for all kinds of places on a website. How you frame something is just impacting how it works. And then we definitely saw the more relevant we can make it to the actual page where it's on. But you said obviously your clients very often have this in place already. The relevance, if you can just kind of try to embody the person that's on this page and what they're going through. If we make the lead magnet be the next logical step for them, it seems really good. So if someone comes to our website and has a question about how to do SEO for Magento, and they see a Magento checklist to get your SEO right, it's just going to be a very logical next step for them to get additional value and opt in for something like this. Whereas if the book we have, for example, is not going to be the right fit for everybody because they are in a particular situation and might have come to the website just to solve this particular issue and to figure out how to optimize a Shopify site, for example, for basic SEO, and then the general ebook is not going to be a good fit. But yeah, definitely framing value. I always try to tell my clients the value obviously needs to be worth more than the email address I'm giving up for it. Mm-hmm. And if the value is really good, I might choose my good email address and not the crappy one I never check. So obviously, also, and not every email address is created equal, right?
I think one thing that's changed in the last few years with the rise of mobile too is that the old web 1.0 style websites with your home, your company, about us, contact us in the menu, then your offer, then all the different section pages explaining what your offer is. Those kind of websites obviously depends on what you're offering, but a great example of how I'll communicate this is I just bought a premium signature the other day off a Facebook ad. I don't know if you've seen them too, but it's a really nicely graphic design signature that they sell for like $30. Mm-hmm. But this is a graphic design agency, this is a great example of a graphic design firm that worked out a really low amount of work for quite a high margin. Probably takes them like 20 seconds to create this product. They sell it for $30 and they do hundreds of them for sure. But when you go to the website, it's literally, there's one thing for you to do. They show examples of all their great signatures, their premium signatures, and how many people have sold. And then just the one area for you to buy it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else on the page. And I think that is something that a lot of businesses should do and would get much better conversion rate just by giving the user one thing to click, next, and then purchase your product, rather than having for them to try and navigate around your website. We sell the best signatures, and then scroll down and then shows a bunch of signatures, and then they just get lost in where they need to head. You want to sort of like push them in a direction that heads towards that conversion without any confusion or leaks, I guess, conversion leaks. So
this is really interesting. I was going to wrap this up, but I have one more question if this is okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah, of course. Have you ever had a client where you suggested them for CRO purposes to split things across multiple websites?
Can you explain a bit more what you mean?
I'm auditing a client right now, a client site, and they have like a very particular design. They have every menu item is essentially a button. So every call to action looks exactly like the menu items. And they offer probably 25 different services. So the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this website is, look, I would split this up into subdomains or something like this and say, okay, this service goes there, this service goes there. As if I was offering CRO tomorrow, I would split it off SEOleverage.com and call this CRO Leverage. Might get this domain after this call. Split this off to CRO Leverage and just make sure people don't get confused with all the kinds of information they're seeing.
Yeah. I think that would be a great idea, because that's web 1.0, right? Like when you're an SEO company, but you also sell AdWords, you also sell Facebook ads, you also sell graphic design, you sell everything, and then you sell nothing because of this. Absolutely. Like as long as you need to really specialize in one thing, or have a separate website for each of those things, so that, because generally people won't cross sell. If they want a logo, they're not going to generally want SEO. Kind of thing. So there's no use having that option there at the one chance that you might be able to sell them some SEO or something. So keep it focused, keep it basic, and the conversion rates will go up from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kurt. I want to quickly recap. You talked about people starting really into A/B testing when they get like 10,000 visitors per month. You talked about this tool as well, Spento Now, I think, and made a note. I'm going to link this in the show notes as well if somebody wants to get some more insights here. You talked about changing things rather than doing an A/B test if you don't get to this level, and see if they don't convert. You obviously need to make a change until you get it converting. Talked about keeping things focused, making sure that obviously the value perception is met in order to get this lead, get this conversion going. And first and foremost, and this is definitely matching the experience we have here as well, trust and authority, probably the most important thing people can fix on their site, just making sure that visitors get a sense that they are trustworthy. There's just so many people out there. I think this is even more an issue now with more and more AI generated content, where it's just so easy to create a website as if you were the expert of anything. I can create a medical website on cancer treatment tomorrow with AI, and probably for a non-expert, it looks really decent, and they might trust my advice. They shouldn't really. So trust and authority, really back up what you're saying with the examples, make sure they're visible, focus people on your website. I think this was really great advice. We're going to publish the links to your site on the show notes. If they want to get in touch with you, someone listening to this show, what would be the best way?
Just convertica.org, convertica.org/blog. We have all my contact details in the right-hand sidebar, my Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube channel. I even did for a period with a bunch of CRO videos.
Awesome. Well, then thank you so much, Kurt, for taking the time. Anybody listening to this show, you're going to find a recording and a written summary over at seoleverage.com/podcast. This is episode 80. My name is Gert Mellach. This was Kurt Philipp from Convertica. Thank you so much.
Cheers.